The call came into 911 dispatch, a man's voice reporting he'd been shot inside the house. Amidst frantic screams,
On this
Alan
desperate call
Russell's
to
desperate plea
911,
for an
Alan Russell
ambulance
pleads
was
for help
recorded.
after...
Hello. 24 hours after the tragedy, a portion of Fairwood Drive in Berkeley Township remained sealed. The area was still an active crime scene,
still
with the
underway.
investigation ongoing. Dispatch directed units to number 8, Fairwood Drive, as a witness reported hearing pops.
Terrifying
Neighbors
moments
the
witnessed
terrifying
by
sequence.
neighbors. Within seconds, three
were lost
lives
in
gone,
seconds
the
before
shooter
killer
then
ended
ending his own.
A resident recalled a volley of bangs, grabbing her daughter in shock, questioning what was happening.
What is going on?
That woman grabbed her daughter out of bed because she heard something no residential street
By the time law enforcement breached the front door on Fairwood Drive, it was silent.
was
Four
already over.
individuals were deceased.
4 people were gone,
One victim,
and one of them,
a 38-year-old
mother of 3,
was found
50 yards from the house.
50 yards. The story of the Russells is one that leaves a lasting, unsettling impression.
Feel it.
Understanding that morning
Before we get into
requires
what
knowing
happened
the
that morning,
individuals involved,
you need to know who
lives
these people
reduced to a
were,
brief news
because
item.
this was
These were
The
real
ongoing
people,
investigation into the
their
missing data
stories
continues,
deserving
with officials
more than a
refusing to comment on
30-second
escalating
media
crisis.
summary.
We will keep-
Alan Russell was 61 years old. And look,
by all
when people
accounts,
talk about this
his
man,
character was
they do not just
described
say he
as
was a good person.
exemplary. He was known as the type of man who was unfailingly present for others.
Just
As
fills a
church
seat at the
elder,
front of the room.
He was not
The
a
kind who
passive
actually
attendant,
leads.
but an active
The kind
leader
the whole congregation
community
leans
relied
on.
upon. He led Bible studies, guided people through personal crises, and gave generously without seeking recognition. That same ethos
and
defined
that
his
same energy
professional
carried
life
into his
as
work.
a caseworker for New
Alan
Jersey's
was a
Child
caseworker for
Protective
the New
Service.
Jersey State.
Anyone familiar with this line of work understands its immense difficulty.
Into
It
homes
involves
that are
entering
barely
unstable
holding
homes,
together.
mediating
You sit across
family
from
crises,
families in real
and making
crisis.
life-altering
You make
decisions
calls
for
that
children. For decades, Alan performed this duty. A colleague noted his positive impact on countless local families.
families
News
across
of
his
death
entire
left
community.
his entire
And when word got
office
out that he was
struggling
gone,
to process
she said the entire
immense
office was at a
loss.
huge
My entire office is at a huge loss of missing him.
That
This
is
was
the kind of mark
profound
this man
impact
left on
he
the
had.
world.
His wife,
Michelle,
aged
was 60 years
was
old,
a missionary, at
a missionary in
their
their
church. She and Alan had built a life centered on their faith, family, and local community.
Every
They were
account,
perceived
they
as a
were a
solid
unit, the kind of couple that other people
others in
genuinely
their
looked up
circle
to.
admired.
Their-
Their daughter, Diana Stewart, was 38, and she was already burdened by a heavy past.
Something
Her
heavy for a
marriage
long
to
time.
Vaughn Stewart
Her marriage
had
to her
been
estranged husband,
volatile
Vaughn
and
Stewart,
dangerous
had not
for
been
some
safe.
time.
There-
There was a documented history of domestic violence, with police called to the home on multiple occasions.
Once over
This
the years,
was not
more
speculation.
than once.
It was
And this
official
was not rumor.
record,
It was on record.
filed
It was in a
away
file
the
somewhere.
system.
At some point,
Diana eventually made the difficult choice to leave, a step many in her situation feared to take.
children
She took
and
her
moved
three
them into her
children
parents'
and
home
found
on Fairwood
refuge at her
Drive.
parents' house
And she went to
on
the courts
Fairwood
and got a
Drive.
restraining.
She then obtained a legal restraining order against Vaughn, an official mandate for him to stay away.
Moved.
She acted
She protected her kids.
decisively to protect
She did
her
everything the
children,
system told her to do.
utilizing every
Now,
tool the system
here is where this
provided.
whole thing...
Vaughn Stewart, 37, was the father of Diana's 3 children.
On this
The
man,
man's
they're
official
hard to look
record
at.
is
Just 1 month
deeply
before any of this happened,
unsettling
Vaughn was
to
arrested for
review.
making...
Just 1 month prior, Vaughn was arrested for making a death threat in a separate domestic case.
arrest for threatening someone's life.
Threatening a life.
And after all of
Yet,
that, he
after
was processed and released.
He was released.
He walked back.
He was free, still with access to a weapon, and unimpeded from driving to 8 Fairwood Drive.
Driving to
Diana
8
had done
Fairwood
everything
Drive.
possible to
Make it
secure
make
her safety.
sense.
Not
Because
waiting
Diana
for
was
the
not sitting
situation to
around
resolve
hoping things
itself.
would work.
She had taken all the prescribed steps for a person trying to escape a dangerous individual.
Someone
She
dangerous.
had the protective order.
She had the
had
order.
relocated,
She had moved out.
and had
She had kept her children close.
near.
And
But the legal framework meant to support these actions ultimately failed to protect her. The
different when
chilling
you really
irony
sit
is
with
that
it.
Alan
Russell has
dedicated
spent his entire
to
career
entering
walking
homes
into
just
homes
like his
exactly
daughter's.
like his own.
These were homes where a woman was attempting to escape a violent man, places where children were trapped in the crossfire, houses with
Homes where the
existing case
paperwork
files,
already
the
existed,
peril
and the
officially
danger was
recorded.
already documented.
This was his life's
That
work.
was his work.
It was the focus of his entire professional life. And now, that exact reality was unfolding under his own roof, as his daughter and her children sought sanctuary there.
Young
3
kids whose
children,
ages were
their
never
ages
publicly
released to the
confirmed,
public,
were inside that house on Fairwood Drive
when
the
he
night
appeared.
Vaughn...
They would witness it all. But to comprehend the final act, one must examine the prelude.
This
Tragedies
do
like
not
this are
just
never
appear out of
spontaneous.
thin air.
A trail always
There's always a
exists.
trail.
In this instance,
And in
the
this
trail was
case,
long,
the trail was
documented,
long.
and clearly visible to
And
many.
it was...
The relationship between Diana and Vaughn had been a landscape of domestic violence for years. This
Violence
wasn't
for
rumor.
years.
These were
Not
official
whispers,
reports,
not rumors.
incidents that brought
On the
law
record,
enforcement to
incidents that
Fairwood
had
Drive
police
on
pulling up
multiple
to Fairwood
occasions.
Drive.
It was the kind of pattern that fills a file, a pattern that should have logically prevented the horror to come.
Enough to prevent what came next. At some point, Diana made her move.
She left him.
She left.
She
got the restraining order.
She took herself and her children to the presumed safety of her parents' home.
Probably felt like the right steps were being taken.
Must have felt as though the proper
but
steps
1 month before the murders, Vaughn.
But 1 month before the slayings, Vaughn was arrested for a death threat in a separate case. 1 month. So you had a man with an extensive history of violence,
with a long history of violence, a restraining order filed against him by his estranged wife, a brand new arrest,
and a new arrest for threatening a life. Yet he walked free. The system processed him and let him go.
And let him go.
Evening,
the night before it all happened, Alan Russell was at church teaching Bible study.
His congregation was there with him, and no one in that room could have known it would be their last time together.
That night, his daughter was there. His grandchildren were asleep in the house.
His
wife was home. They were together.
They were protected. At least, that was the belief.
His mind about what the next morning was going to look like.
Outcome.
It was just after 5 in the morning when Vaughn Stewart pulled.
To be clear, there was no knock on the door. There was no phone call.
He did not show up at a reasonable hour to talk. He pulled up before sunrise, when the street was...
He came before sunrise, while the street was shrouded in darkness and the neighbors slept, when no one inside had reason to watch the door. He chose the hour of maximum vulnerability, when all defenses are down, when the children are asleep in their beds. He arrived with a firearm. He entered the home and shot Alan and Michelle Russell, Diana's parents, the two people who had offered their home as a sanctuary to protect their own daughter and grandchildren. Alan was 61, Michelle 60, shot inside their residence before they had any chance to react. Despite his wounds, Alan Russell managed to reach a phone and dial 911. This man, after being shot, found the fortitude to call for help. The very man who had spent his career answering emergency calls for other families was now desperately making his own. He told the dispatcher that he had been shot. 911. What is your emergency? I'm shot. I'm shot in the house. Get an ambulance. Hello. In the background of the call, you can hear screaming. You can hear the unfolding chaos. And Alan, a man of profound faith and purpose who had served his community, was fighting to hold on until help could arrive. It was already too late. Diana fled. The sound of gunshots spurred her to immediate action. She escaped the house and sprinted down the street, into the darkness, into the cold of a Tuesday morning, on a block where no one knew the violence taking place behind that door. Vaughn pursued her. He left the house and chased her down the street, firing his weapon multiple times in a residential area at 5 in the morning. Neighbors were ripped from their sleep by the sound of rapid, consistent gunfire. It echoed down the street before anyone could process what they were hearing. Diana Stewart was 38 years old, a mother of 3 children, a woman who had followed every instruction, obtained the order, moved away, and kept her children near. She had tried desperately to erect a wall between her family and this man. She made it out of the house. She was running for her life. She got only so far. Her body was found 50 yards from her parents' front door. 50 yards, the length of half a basketball court. That is how close she came to safety. It was not nearly far enough. After the chaos subsided, Vaughn returned to the house, ending his own life. When officers entered the Fairwood Drive home, they confronted a scene of mass casualty. The deceased were Alan Russell, Michelle Russell, and Diana Stewart. Her body was found down the block, while Vaughn was discovered inside, dead from a self-inflicted wound. The initial details of the triple homicide emerged slowly, painting a grim and confusing picture for investigators. Authorities would soon release the identities of the victims. They were confirmed as 61-year-old Alan Russell, his 60-year-old wife Michelle, and their 38-year-old daughter, Diana Stewart. The killer was identified as 37-year-old Vaughn Stewart of Maplewood. The official account stated Vaughn entered the residence, shot Mr. and Mrs. Russell, then chased Diana down the street, killing her 50 yards from the house. Diana had been living at the home with her parents and her 3 minor children. Vaughn and Diana were the parents of the 3 children, but had been living apart. The violence erupted just after 5 a.m., shattering the morning stillness of Fairwood Drive while the neighborhood slept. At least 8 shots were fired in total, some of the sounds captured by a nearby video doorbell. Dispatch audio revealed the tension, with a victim confirmed at number 8 Fairwood while the scene was still considered unsecured. Terrified neighbors witnessed the unfolding tragedy as the police response crackled over scanner radios. By the time medics were en route to the location, 3 lives had already been violently extinguished. The gunman then turned his weapon on himself, leaving behind only the echo of repeated gunfire. A nearby resident recalled shielding her daughter in bed as a rapid succession of shots echoed through the pre-dawn quiet. In the aftermath, there was no mistaking the sound for what it was: gunfire. Stunned residents, some of whom had moved to the area for its tranquility, struggled to process the morning's events. The first instinct was purely protective, a mother covering her child, unaware of where the danger was coming from. The sound of the gunshots had been overwhelmingly loud. The Ocean County Prosecutor's Office would later confirm 3 homicides and the shooter's subsequent death by his own hand. The crime scene remained cordoned off for the rest of the day as police assured the public there was no further threat. One witness described a paralyzing fear, her body shaking, not knowing if or when the shooting would stop. The emerging timeline revealed that police were arriving just moments after Vaughn shot and killed Diana. As he retreated 50 yards back toward the house after killing her, responding officers heard one final gunshot. It was at this moment, investigators believe, that Vaughn took his own life. Inside the residence, the couple's 3 children were found alive and physically unharmed. In an instant, they were made orphans. Officers responding to 8 Fairwood Drive had been warned of shots fired. The entire incident was set in motion by a neighbor's frantic call to police reporting gunfire. Some units were so close, they reportedly saw Vaughn re-enter the residence just before the final shot came from inside. They were on the street when it happened. By the time they forced entry, the violence was over. They crossed the threshold into a suburban home that had become a slaughterhouse, knowing 3 children were somewhere inside. A careful search of the house revealed the bodies of Alan and Michelle, killed in the home they had opened as a sanctuary for their daughter. Investigators then located Diana's body outside, approximately 50 yards away, bearing multiple gunshot wounds. Vaughn was inside, dead from a self-inflicted wound. 4 bodies, 1 address. That stretch of Fairwood Drive was sealed with crime scene tape for the entire day as investigators began their work. It remained an active crime scene well into the following afternoon. Neighbors could only watch from a distance, trying to comprehend an act that seemed to defy all reason. One resident voiced the
One resident said, "This is not the kind of town where you expect anything like this to happen."
Supposed to happen. Another spoke of a deep, personal sadness that fell over the community, even for those who had never met the family.
Stated that the motive for the attack remained unclear, and from a legal standpoint, that is the language.
It is the official language used when a case is open, but the person responsible is no longer alive to be interrogated. But the evidence on the ground,
the facts on the ground told a very specific story.
And disturbing
a man with a
narrative
documented history of domestic violence.
A restraining order, filed against him by his estranged wife, served as a chilling precursor to the tragedy.
Arrival with a weapon at the home where that wife and her children were sleeping. You can draw your own.
What authorities did confirm was that the couple's 3 children were located inside the home, physically untouched.
Physically unharmed inside the home.
Question
And the next
of where the
step, figuring out where those kids were going to go,
placed,
came with its own
introduced a layer of grief that defies words. The 3 were remanded to the New Jersey Department of Children and Families.
Jersey Department of Children and Families. The same agency where their grandfather, Alan Russell, had worked.
Had invested his entire career, the very system he had championed, and the people he had worked beside each day.
Professional life.
Colleagues
were now the ones responsible for looking after his grandchildren.
His own grandchildren. Consider that reality for a moment. Quinn Gunderson, a colleague of Alan's at DCF, stated her office was devastated.
A huge loss.
Working with him,
she had worked alongside him and made clear that this was not just a co-worker she was describing.
He assisted for everyone around him and in every task he undertook.
She set up an online fundraiser to help cover funeral costs for Alan, Michelle, and Diana, and
to provide for the 3 children left behind. The community's response was overwhelming, from people who had known them for years,
family for years, church members, former neighbors, all of them reaching out, all of them trying to find some way to do so.
A friend from Alan's childhood articulated the feeling succinctly on social media.
He said he had not seen Alan in years, but that he grew up with him and his family. He asked for prayer.
He called for prayers for the children and the family, for peace and for grace.
Something that deserves to be repeated. And he said, this whole tragedy could have been avoided. And then he then asked, now that it happened, how many others could still be saved? It was not a rhetorical question, but a literal one. There would be no trial. There was no trial.
And no
there was no courtroom.
No moment for a judge to look this man in the eye.
No moment where a judge looked this man in.
Vaughn Stewart foreclosed that possibility when he used the gun on himself inside the house on Fairwood Drive.
house
The
on
matter
Fairwood
was
Drive.
concluded
The
by
case was
death,
closed by death,
not
not by law.
adjudicated
And for a
by
lot of people who
law.
loved this,
For the many people who cherish this family, that void of a formal reckoning is its own form of torment.
that
There is
reflects
no
what was
verdict to
taken.
cite, no
Just
sentence to
silence where
reflect the
accountability
loss,
should have
only a
been.
vacuum where
That's what the record
accountability
does
should
show.
reside. What the official record does show is that Vaughn was arrested only 1 month before the killings for a death threat in a domestic violence report.
Case.
1 month prior.
1 month. He had a documented history. He had a restraining order filed against him. He had a fresh arrest.
He had a fresh arrest on his record, and not one element of that paper trail prevented what took place on Fairwood Drive. It is a
Detail that
detail
investigators,
that will weigh on
advocates,
investigators,
and everyone who knew this
advocates,
family will
and
be
everyone
sitting with
connected
for
to
a
this
very
family
long
for a
time.
long time. The evening before Alan Russell was murdered, he was leading a Bible study. His congregation says the sessions will never feel the same.
Never be the same without him. And that makes sense, because people who show up the way Alan showed up, people who leave,
people who operate from a place of genuine purpose and give of themselves without performance,
that
leave a
does not
space
fill
that is
back
never
in
truly
when they
filled.
are gone.
Michelle Russell,
Michelle
a
Russell,
missionary and
a
mother
missionary,
who opened her doors to
a
her
mother,
daughter and grandchildren
a woman
without
who opened her
hesitation.
home to
Gone. Diana Stewart, a woman who did everything she was supposed to do.
right,
She identified
who recognized the danger,
She
who got
left.
out,
She
who protected her children,
kids.
who ran,
She sought
gone,
safety.
and 3 kids who went to
And 3 children who went to bed with the mother, grandmother, and grandfather awoke in the custody of strangers.
Here
This
is
the
what this
question the
story leaves
in its wake.
behind.
What
It
is the
leaves
system
behind the
truly
question
built
of
for
what the
when a
system
woman
is actually
reports
built
that
to
she is
do
afraid?
when
Diana secured a restraining order. The police had previously been called to the residence.
had just
Vaughn
been
had
arrested for a
recently
death
arrested for a
threat,
death threat,
and he
yet
still had a
He still
gun.
had access to
He
a
still
gun.
showed up.
And
Moving
he still
past that
appeared.
is hard.
It is difficult to move past that fact, because doing so implies we've learned how to do better. The record suggests we have not.
Russell
Alan
believed
held a
people
deep
could
belief
change.
that people could
He built his
change,
whole career
a
on that
principle
belief.
upon which he built
He
his
worked
career as an
cases.
advocate for
He
families.
advocated.
He stepped into homes engulfed in crisis and attempted to make them safe.
It's
There is a
about the
brutal
fact that
honesty in
the
fact
one
that the
situation
crisis
he could not
resolve
fix was the one that
followed
came
him
home with him.
This story
This
has
is not
no
a
neat
story
conclusion.
with a
It is a story of what happens when red flags are treated as administrative tasks instead of emergencies. It is
about the
vast
gap
gulf
between what the system promises and what it
to
actually
protect
delivers.
and what
And
it
it is
actually
about a family.
provides. And it is about a family, a faithful, loving, deeply human family that was owed so much more. Rest Alan, Michelle, and Diana.
Rest
and
Diana.
to their 3 children,
And to those 3 children,
you are seen.
we see you.
And
We have
you
not forgotten you,
been
and we
forgotten.
hope the world.
The hope remains for a justice that eluded the family. When a story pierces the conscience, it demands to be heard by others.
Made you
The
feel
only
something.
potential for progress
Share it
from
with
such
somebody.
darkness
Because the
hinges
only
on a
way stories like
collective
this lead to
refusal
anything
turn
better
away.
is-
For those who are new to the annals of true crime tragedies,
You
now is
cannot
the moment
hide
to
your
follow the
sins
trail.
from the Almighty.
The focus here is on neglected accounts, terror inside a home, the poison of certain bonds, and the lives extinguished when a community chose silence. The chronicle of these tragedies is incomplete, and the next chapter demands an observer. The tragedy of the Russell family is a haunting reminder that behind every administrative red flag is a human life hanging in the balance. It is a story that demands we look past the cold ink of restraining orders and police reports to see the desperate faces of those seeking sanctuary. The most profound lesson here is that safety is not a paperwork exercise. It is a collective responsibility. Diana Stewart followed every rule. She spoke up, she moved, she legally barred her abuser. Her father, Alan, spent his life mending broken families. Yet, the system they trusted treated a documented history of violence as a routine file rather than a ticking clock. We must move toward a world where never again is a commitment, not just a headline. This means demanding swifter accountability for threats of violence and ensuring that the walls we build to protect the vulnerable are actually impenetrable. To the survivors and those living in fear, your courage is seen. To the community, our silence is the killer's greatest ally. Let us honor Alan, Michelle, and Diana by turning our collective grief into a relentless pursuit of a system that truly protects, because no one should ever be murdered 50 yards away from safety.